Many people are looking for ways to increase their income, but most of them don't truly know how. And realizing that working harder doesn't automatically mean earning more often leaves them disappointed. Because in the modern world, income growth is less about the amount of labor you put in and more about your position inside the system. That's why two people can work the same hours and end up worlds apart. One earns by selling time, the other earns by controlling value. Income growth is usually not a more effort problem, it's a better leverage problem. Most people believe the path to higher income is getting promoted, waiting for a raise, or taking on extra work. But those methods often only help you survive. They rarely create the breakthrough people hope for. Because when your income depends on someone else's approval, a company's budget, or the state of the economy, control is still not in your hands. The people who raise their income permanently are the ones who first change the way they think. They stop centering their life around time and start centering it around value. Instead of staying dependent on a single source, they focus on making income scalable, something that can multiply. That's why income growth isn't luck. It follows specific rules. In this series, we'll break down, step by step, the 5 core rules that people who genuinely increase their income have to follow. The first rule starts with the most common mistake most people make without even realizing it. Because if you want to increase your income, you first have to look honestly at why you've been stuck in place. The first trap most people fall into, without even realizing it when trying to increase their income, is believing they can become free by continuing to sell their time for money. The modern system teaches people that earning in direct proportion to the hours they work is fair, but this equation is limiting from the very beginning. A day only has 24 hours. And there is a hard ceiling on how many of those hours can be sold. No matter how talented, disciplined, or hardworking someone is, they are still bound by time. When income is directly tied to hours worked, a person unknowingly locks themselves inside an invisible time constraint. The only way to earn more becomes working more. And at a certain point, that is no longer possible. This model keeps people busy, but it does not make them wealthy. People whose income truly grows start from a completely different place. They don't sell time. They create value outside of time. They build things that can be created once and sold repeatedly. Knowledge, systems, products, content, brands, or processes all share the same core trait. Once produced, they don't require the same amount of effort every single time they generate income. Selling time can feel safe because there is a predictable monthly paycheck. But that safety is an illusion, because income becomes entirely dependent on the ability to keep working. Illness, crises, layoffs, or economic downturns can reduce that income to zero overnight. That's why time-based income carries high risk, even though most people don't recognize it. For someone who wants to increase their income, the real question is not, how can I work more, but how many times can I sell the same effort? Without this mental shift, income growth never becomes permanent. As long as a person sells time, they remain inside the system. Those who rise above it see time not as a cost, but as an investment tool. This is where the second major rule of income growth truly begins. Without moving from time-limited income to scalable income, a real breakthrough is impossible. In the next section, we'll explore why this transformation is so difficult for most people and why the system actively pushes everyone toward selling time. When most people set out to increase their income, the first things they think of are working more, getting promoted, or negotiating a higher salary. But the real danger isn't the size of the income, it's the source of it. Relying on a single income stream is far riskier in the modern world than most people realize, because it means tying your entire life to one point you don't fully control. The moment you lose your job, your industry contracts, or economic conditions shift, that income can drop to zero instantly. When you look at people who have managed to stay financially stable throughout history, one pattern stands out. None of them relied on a single source. Whether it's a salary, a job, a client, or an industry, single-channel income structures are always fragile. Systems change, companies downsize, technologies become obsolete, but expenses never slow down or stop. That's why a single income structure, even if it looks stable from the outside, constantly produces stress on the inside. People can't take risks, they delay decisions, and they often accept conditions they don't want. Spreading income across multiple sources, however, is not just about making more money, it's about gaining psychological freedom. Even a small second income increases negotiating power. A third income begins to break dependency altogether. The critical point is this: additional income streams should not be seen as replacements for the main income, but as insurance. Not everyone can quit their job overnight and start a new life, but everyone can gradually open second and third paths for themselves. Digital products, knowledge-based work, commission systems, or small ventures that can scale over time are valuable for this reason, because they loosen the direct link between income and time. While people with a single income are forced to move in sync with the system's rhythm, those with multiple incomes learn how to use the system to their advantage. This gap grows over time. What starts as small side income can eventually surpass the main income. The key is making this transition consciously and patiently. Because income growth is not a sudden leap, it's a process of building structure. And those who build that structure don't fear crises. They are prepared for them. Many people who want to increase their income assume that working harder or spending longer hours is the solution. But the reality is this: in the modern world, income growth is not proportional to time spent. It is proportional to value created. This is why two people can invest the same amount of time and end up with vastly different incomes. The system does not reward how tired you are. It rewards which problems you solve. That's why the fourth, and perhaps most critical, rule of income growth is becoming continuously more valuable. Value is not an abstract idea. It is defined by measurable, concrete outcomes. The harder a skill is to find, the fewer people who can perform it, and the bigger the problem it solves, the higher the income it commands. That is exactly why skills everyone knows, everyone does, and everyone can easily access tend to produce low income. In contrast, skills that take time to learn, require experience, and deliver real results are rewarded with higher pay. One of the biggest misconceptions people fall into is believing that value is determined solely by a diploma or a title. In reality, what the market pays for is which problem you solve and how well you solve it. If 1,000 people can solve the same problem you do, your negotiating power is low. But if only a few people can solve it, you set the terms. That's why anyone who wants to increase their income must ask a hard question. Is the work I do indispensable within the system, or is it easily replaceable? If the answer is the latter, the solution is not working more, it's becoming more valuable. This is a deliberate investment process. Every new skill learned, every experience gained, and every problem solved increases a person's market value step by step. Another dimension of value creation is being outcome-focused. People don't pay for processes, they pay for results. It's not how many hours you worked, it's what you achieved. Those who understand this distinction gradually move from being paid workers to becoming value providers. Because the system pays a premium for people who can take responsibility and deliver results. At this point, income growth accelerates. For those who center their lives around value creation, money stops being the goal and becomes a natural outcome. And once this mindset shifts, income growth is no longer a coincidence. One of the most common mistakes people make when trying to increase their income is placing excessive trust in a single income source. A salary, a bonus structure, or earnings from one primary client can feel comfortable for a while. But in the modern world, this comfort comes with serious fragility. When income depends on a single source, most of the control is no longer in your hands. If conditions change, an industry contracts, or decision-making power belongs to others, income can quickly come under threat or disappear entirely. That's why the fifth major rule of income growth is diversification. Diversifying income is not only about earning more money, it is also about protecting financial stability. A single income keeps people locked into preservation mode, constantly trying not to lose what they have. Someone with alternatives, on the other hand, can make freer and more rational decisions. The key here is not doing many things at once, but building additional income channels intelligently, while maintaining a primary income source. Creating a second and even a third channel over time can make a significant difference. These channels can be active or semi-passive, knowledge-based income, digital products, consulting, project-based work, or investment returns all fall into this category. The core principle is simple. Your entire income should not depend solely on the moments you are actively working. If income stops completely the moment you stop working, that income is not sustainable. Many people think, first I'll earn a lot from my main job, then I'll look at other options. In reality, the opposite approach is far healthier. Small side incomes tend to grow over time and can eventually support or even surpass the main income. This process requires patience, because additional income streams usually grow slowly at first. But time is the greatest lever here. What looks insignificant over 1 year can turn into serious security over 5 years. Someone who is not dependent on a single income also gains stronger negotiating power. They don't have to accept unfavorable conditions. They can take calculated risks, and they see opportunities more clearly. Over the long term, this indirectly raises income as well. Income diversification also requires a mental shift. A person stops defining themselves by a single title or position. They no longer tie their value to one identity. This flexibility becomes one of the strongest shields against economic volatility. Ultimately, anyone who truly wants to increase their income does not rely on a single door. They keep multiple doors partially open, because in the modern economy, the winners are not just those who work hard, but those who spread risk and structure their income intelligently. Most people who want to increase their income imagine it as a single opportunity, a single moment, a sudden breakthrough, or one perfectly timed move. But in the real world, income growth is not a destination. It is a process that requires patience. There is no point where you arrive and say, "That's it, I'm done," because economies, industries, and opportunities are constantly changing. For this reason, the final and perhaps most important rule of income growth is building a system that continuously updates itself. Income growth emerges from disciplined habits accumulating over time. Small but correct decisions made consistently over a single year can create massive differences a few years later. Most people chase large gains in the short term, which leads them toward risky and unsustainable paths. Sustainable income growth, however, comes from consistent steps that often look boring on the surface. Controlling expenses, directing income intentionally, investing in self-development, and patiently growing opportunities are the core pillars of this process. What matters here is not motivation, but systems. Motivation is temporary. Systems are permanent. People who increase their income don't progress because they push themselves every day. They progress because they build the right system. They continue learning, track market changes, and are not afraid to change direction when necessary. At the same time, they don't view income growth purely as money. Gaining time, flexibility, and decision-making freedom are also part of the equation. Because high income that constantly keeps you under pressure is not real success. True success is not income controlling you. It is you controlling your income. At this stage, patience becomes the greatest test. Most people quit because results don't appear immediately, even when they are on the right path. But in the financial world, the biggest difference is made by those who can apply the same principles consistently over long periods of time. Income growth is like a marathon, not those who start fast, but those who move steadily win. The rules explained in this series do not create miracles on their own, but when applied together, they form a powerful foundation. For someone who increases their value, builds a smart relationship with income, avoids dependence on a single source, and manages the process consciously, income growth becomes inevitable. In the end, increasing your income is not a matter of luck. It is a long-term journey shaped by conscious choices. And in that journey, the greatest difference is made by small, correct steps taken today and repeated patiently over time.